Welcome to Unmasking the Gods, lifting the veil on religion, power, and myth. Why do we believe? Why across every century and culture do human beings reach for gods, even when those gods stay silent? Some call it fear, others call it faith, but belief is older than both. Long before scripture or priesthood, belief was survival. Imagine the first humans, small and frightened beneath an infinite sky. Lightning flashed, the wind howled, the sun vanished and returned, and no one knew why. In a world without science, belief became the first language of hope. It turned chaos into story. It gave the unknown a face, and that face comforted us. We didn't invent belief, we inherited it. It was the warmth that kept us from freezing in the dark. The Egyptians believed their hearts would be weighed after death, proof that justice ruled even beyond the grave. The Greeks believed the gods watched over them. The Israelites believed in covenant, that history itself was guided by divine promise. And Christians believed that love became flesh, that God walked among them, and death was no longer the end. Each story gave the same gift: meaning. To believe was to feel seen, guided, loved, to know that life wasn't random. But every comfort has its cost, because the same story that protects the heart can also imprison the mind. Faith in its beginning was freedom, a way to understand mystery. But as empires rose and power gathered around the sacred, belief hardened into law. Myth became mandate. Mystery became hierarchy. The gods who once inspired us began to rule us. When belief becomes institution, the light of faith dims. What began as awe turns into obedience. Questioning becomes heresy. And yet, people cling to belief not because they're blind, but because they're human. The mind cannot live without meaning. The heart cannot bear a godless void. So even as religion became a cage, it was a necessary one. It taught morality, community, compassion. It bound people together through famine and war. It gave hope to the dying and justice to the oppressed. Without belief, humanity might not have survived its own despair. Religion was the first therapy, the first medicine for fear. It told us, you are not alone. The darkness will not last. And for thousands of years, that was enough. But the world changed. The telescope replaced the temple dome. The microscope replaced the miracle. We discovered galaxies older than Genesis, fossils older than Eden, and laws of physics that made divine intervention unnecessary. Yet belief didn't vanish. It adapted. Those who left religion still built cathedrals of their own, in science, in progress, in the human spirit. The form changed, but the longing remained. Because belief was never just about gods. It was about hope. About the refusal to live without meaning. Even the atheist believes, and in truth, in love, in something better than chaos. We can't escape the need for faith. We can only redefine what we place it in, because to live without belief is to stare into emptiness, and the soul cannot bear that silence for long. That's why faith persists. Because while logic satisfies the mind, only meaning satisfies the heart. And meaning is what religion gave us. The tragedy is that once meaning becomes rule, it begins to die. What was once a living flame turns to ash the moment we stop questioning it. Every religion begins as revelation. Someone touches the infinite and brings back light. But as generations pass, others build walls around that light to protect it. And the longer those walls stand, the more they block the very light they were meant to preserve. Belief becomes certainty, certainty becomes fear. And fear kills the living spirit of faith. Yet doubt, the very thing religion fears most, is actually its evolution. Every prophet doubted. Moses questioned God. Job cursed heaven. Jesus cried out in despair. Doubt isn't the enemy of faith. It's the doorway through which faith becomes understanding. True spirituality begins where certainty ends. When belief collapses, something deeper awakens. A knowing that doesn't depend on stories. The mystics of every age discovered this, that the divine isn't found in the heavens or scriptures, but in awareness itself. The same light that once guided us through temples now burns quietly within. That realization is terrifying at first. It feels like losing everything. The familiar gods fall silent, and the old meaning dissolves. But in that silence, a truer faith begins to form. Not belief in something, but union with everything. The prophets called it enlightenment, awakening, salvation. But it's all the same recognition. The light we worshipped was never outside of us. It was inside, waiting for us to see. The comfort of belief was necessary. It held us through the night. But the cage of belief is what we must now outgrow. Faith was never meant to be permanent. It was the bridge, not the destination. To move beyond belief isn't to abandon God. It's to see God everywhere. When the mind no longer needs the story, the heart finally sees the truth. That the divine was never separate, never distant, never conditional. It was simply existence itself, shining through every form. Maybe that's what Jesus meant when he said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Because truth doesn't require belief. It just requires seeing. The comfort and the cage both serve their purpose. The comfort keeps us alive. The cage keeps us safe while we grow. But there comes a moment when safety becomes stagnation, when the walls built to protect us start to suffocate the soul. And in that moment, the spirit begins to push against the walls, not out of rebellion, but out of longing. We begin to realize that belief was never the goal. Awakening was. To awaken is not to destroy faith, but to fulfill it. It's to look at the same old symbols, the cross, the sun, the flame, and see not superstition, but reflection. The cross isn't just suffering, it's transformation. The sun isn't just a god, it's consciousness. The flame isn't just ritual, it's life itself. When you see that, belief is no longer something you hold. It's something that holds you, and quietly, without words. The old religions carried us through the dark. Now we stand in the dawn. The question isn't whether humanity should stop believing, but whether we can finally believe differently. Not in dogma, but in awareness. Not in separation, but in connection. Not in salvation, but in awakening. Belief gave us the language. Awareness gives us the voice. The comfort kept us alive. The cage kept us contained. But now it's time to walk beyond both, into the open sky of understanding. There, beyond the stories and the symbols, the light still waits. The same light that guided the ancients, the same light that shines in every soul brave enough to see. We needed to believe to survive. Now we must awaken to truly live.